I want to thank everyone for being here. Whenever I see these kind of microphones, I think about Janet Jackson on her Rhythm Nation tour. And I'm really feeling my oats right now in that way. So this is like a long-term dream of mine to actually have one of these on my face. So I want to definitely thank our sound for the amazing work that's been happening all morning in these last couple days and continues to happen. I want to thank Michael Kelleher and Megan Eckerly and like the amazing team of Windham Campbell Prize for just bringing this kind of spirit and these sort of luminaries to this community for us to kind of share space and unpack the things that seem to matter still, which include drama, poetry, and fiction and nonfiction. And thanks whoever put up this tent. It's kind of a hot day, and it feels good to be in this shade, and thank you all for coming. And definitely thank you, Roy, and thank you, Matilda, for flying all the way here and being so jet-lagged. I was very fortunate to receive the Windham Campbell Prize probably like a decade ago, and I remember feeling like they really make you work for that money. So this is less a prize than a coercion, and I think we are all the better for your presence. I'm going to do something radical and not ask you about themes in your work. I'm not going to ask you about particular plays. I'm not going to ask you about being black and British. Yes, I'm curious. We're here to talk about the art of playwriting, which is not a title I chose, but I am accepting. And I'm curious to hear us talk about whether or not playwriting is actually an art. Do you believe that playwriting is an art?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Oh, I've done it now. I said yes now. Okay, Roy, back it up. I think it's for me. It's like music, singing. Also, that's why I'm always in awe of singers. As I said before, I was an actor, but God, I couldn't sing. But I admire just the ability to hear a tune, process it in your head, and then able to repeat that tune. And I think writing is that kind of form of art as well. You hear people speak. You hear the way they speak as well. In spite of what you want to say, regardless of what you want to talk about. And that's fine. And that's important. I often say this to younger writers when they say, I want to write a play about this and that. I say, okay, what's it about? And they say, it's about Gaza. It's about Ukraine. It's about, this and that. And I say, that's great, that's good. But what's it about? And sometimes they repeat it. They repeat the same answer. And I say, no. What is it about? Who are you? That's the world. And that's not going anywhere. The world of your story. But, who are the characters? What do they want? What do they want from each other? What do they want from themselves? And that's where the story, the gift of what they say and how they say it to people, how they say it to themselves and to everyone else in the world that they're living in. That's quite a skillful thing to do, and not all of us can do it.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
But thankfully, I like to think of myself as someone who can. And
I think you can.
Yeah, well,
I think you're here because you can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Matilda, I'm curious for you. Like, what about playwriting as an art in your mind?
Yeah, I often, for a long time, I think I still do think of playwriting as a bit like sculpture, that like you've got this massive slab of clay and you're just like making a lot of cuts and you actually don't know what the final image is until you see it. So there's a lot of time, there's just kind of a lot of writing, a lot of generating of material, which is why I really like the term vomit draft, because I'm just purging everything and then I have to sift through it for the little, that's a sweet corn. Like there's just kind of a lot of cutting and sculpting and crafting, and so I like thinking of it as sculpture in a similar way. And also patience, because trust me when I say, I would love to just kind of like take an axe to a clay and it's ready, but actually it takes so much like time and persistence and patience until you see what the final form it takes. So sometimes when you were saying earlier, when people would ask about what's the play about, it's like, I don't know till opening night. Ask me after we've put it in front of an audience and I can tell you what it's about. Because there's still so much that is malleable and movable and changeable right up until it's in front of an audience. So yeah, I definitely think playwriting is an art because also it requires learning, and I love learning. I don't think I'll ever stop loving learning, and playwriting requires you to learn, and sometimes unlearn.
Yeah, that's funny. I really identify, I'm like a writer-rewriter person. Like I really think rewriting is writing. I'm curious, is that the case with you, Roy? Are you someone who revisions are a major part of your process?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
does it kind of come out fully formed?
No, it never comes out fully formed. It's kind of what Matilda says. I do a vomit draft as well, and I think the fun part is, I think for writers as well as for us, is each draft is a mission. It's its own little mission. The first draft, I think, is self-explanatory. You just get it out of your head. Don't get it right, get it written. That's one of my favourite phrases from my tutor at college. He often used to say that. Don't get it right, Roy, just get it written. And then the second draft, and possibly the third draft, and maybe even the fourth, is about finding the play you want to write from the play you've already written. And that ties in, I think, a lot of what Matilda's just said. You figure it out as well.
And so when you sit down, I guess I'm curious to hear you talk about what the first form of an idea is. Does it come to you in character? Does it come to you in like a feeling? Does it come to you as a scene? What is the first nugget that drives you through the draft?
It's all three. It's all three. I've had experiences when it's been each of one of those that you just listed. I do have the most fun when I know it's a person, it's a character. They're like a dot on the middle of my page, and then you write the people around them and then the world around them as well. So I have a lot of fun when I think of it in those terms.
And have you clocked over? You've had an incredible career, and you've written many, I would say, if not masterpieces.
More than one.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was amazing. Well, think about anyway. Please read
yeah.
Roy's plays if you haven't. But have you noticed, having been a fledgling writer to where you are now, say you're a journeyman, verging on master, or if you want to be a master, you can be that too. But I don't want to make people feel crazy. But maybe I do make people feel crazy.
I wish
there's something about.
I wish I'd be paid as a master.
Right, exactly.
Hang on, I'm still getting paid the same as I was when I started years ago.
But do you have memories of how it was starting out versus where it is now? Like, what has your practice kind of perfected itself in some way? Are you still the same writer in front of that laptop or in front of that page
I'm
that
the
you
same
were?
writer in the sense that when you go back to the blank screen or the blank piece of paper, you have to start this shit all over again. That doesn't change. That's still the same. And often writers always ask me that same question, and they're always surprised. I say, no, it doesn't. That doesn't go away. So
you still
deal
feel like
with
the same writer.
Still in that sense, I do. Yeah. So I do feel. Yeah, it's still a beginning. It's still a new beginning, and you hope your life lessons that you learn along the way, and as a person, I don't know about a writer, I know I'm different than I was 20 years ago. Views have changed, and things I may have believed in 30 years ago, it's like cheese. It kind of matures into something else, and then you hope as well as pray that goes along with you when you write.
Matilda, for you, what's the nugget? What's the impulse that, if you don't know what it's about, there's still something that you set in front of yourself to get you to keep writing. What is that thing? How would you describe it?
I think, so I'd say probably earlier on in my career, I was very emotionally driven when I was writing. And a lot of my plays stem from anger. So like anger about the world, anger about not understanding something, often anger about injustice. Would often be the driving force through my work, but I feel like that's changed in recent years and I think it's changed, I think, in recent years also in reaction to my health, that I'm a lot slower, I have to take my time, I can still write long form, so I tend to prefer pen and paper, because it's just like this connection between my hand and my brain, where if I'm just writing, I can write till I fall asleep, whereas if I'm in front of a laptop, I could stare at a blank page and scroll on YouTube for hours and not write a word. So I still find handwriting really important to my process. But nowadays, I write with an agenda. Like what I have, like, I feel like I'm holding something that I want to explore or better understand about the world, and so I'm often kind of like, let me go see what's been done. That's also part of my process. So I'll read plays of similar subject matter or similar themes. I'll watch films of similar subject matter, similar themes, because I want to see what's missing. What version have we not seen enough of or heard enough of, or what's the accepted consensus on something then I want to go against that consensus. So I'm often, I kind of write. I think nowadays I write very more consciously than I did when I started, which was very emotion driven. Yeah.
And do you feel there's a difference in the work now than there was back then? Like, how does the process feel different?
Yeah, so like I was saying, feel like it takes me a lot longer, so I do germinate and ruminate a lot longer on ideas before putting them on the page. So I often dream about stuff, I'll read things, I'll create playlists, I'll try and find people more knowledgeable about stuff, especially if it's maybe outside of my lived experience or expertise. Then I'm writing up a list of these are the people I need to talk to, or what am I going to ask them? Do they have time for me to like hop on a Zoom or, kind of meet up in person so I can ask them questions to better understand something. And that's kind of the fun part, really, because I'm kind of like a kind of intrepid explorer into the world of the play before I sit down to actually write it. I'm actually just kind of collecting all these Thanos gemstones of this is going to be really helpful for character, this is going to be really helpful for world building, this is going to be really helpful for themes. So I'm just kind of collecting information and inspirations before I then take some time away before I begin that journey of, okay, we've got a shit ton that we've collected, now we have to refine and go through it and discard what we sadly don't need and think about what we do need.
And what's helping you sift through that? If you say you don't know what the play's about yet, what is it that you're following from question to question, from resource to resource? What's that thing driving you to map out this kind of rich treasure for yourself?
In some ways, I think I'm often asking a lot of questions, and I'm often asking, what don't I know and why? Because we live in such a information-rich world. How is it something has escaped my kind of like bubble, in a way, of the people that I speak to, the communities I'm a part of? So I'm often asking, what still don't I know? What don't I understand? But then why don't I know it? Why don't I understand? Why is it something not spoken about within my community? Why isn't it something I don't see every day? Why is it not in mainstream media? So I'm kind of also exploring why I lack the knowledge. Yeah.
Roy, I have a question for you. It's twofold. One, do you write longhand, or do you start with longhand?
No, I start with a vomit draft.
And that's written or typed?
That's typed. It's just to get it out of my brain and onto the screen, as it were. And then usually the second or third draft, it's mostly the second draft, I do longhand.
Wow, you rewrite the whole thing by hand?
Yeah, by hand, yeah.
Do you use a pencil or pen?
Pen.
Fountain pen or ballpoint pen? I need to know, Roy. I need to know.
A ballpoint pen any day of the week.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And do you write in like a notebook that's bound, or you write on loose leaf?
No, on pieces of paper. It's
like
one
loose
of
paper.
It's one of my rituals. I always go out to the store and I buy the kind of the book of marked plain paper.
Yep.
Lined paper.
It is lined.
That's a ritual of mine. I do that. I also buy a pen as well.
You also buy a new pen?
I buy a new pen.
And do you write through the whole pen in the process?
I write through the whole pen, yeah.
Wow.
I told my agent once I did that, and he says, "Oh, that's amazing. What do you do with it?" And I said, "I throw them away." And
I bronze them, yeah.
And he looks at me like I just burgled his house. And he goes, "Don't ever do that again. Keep them.
Oh my gosh, agents. They're looking for everything. And do you have any similar rituals for those early drafts?
I'm a bit more inconsistent. So similar to you, I'll have scribblings, on lots of pieces of paper. When the play is done, I shred them. Because I'm like, this cannot see the light of day. I don't want people to ever know what was going on in my mind, who influenced me. No. No. But people can see the stuff on my notes app that I'll have a lot of. I have my phone by my bed, so first thing in the morning, if something comes to me, last thing at night, so I have something where I can quickly write something down and then go back to sleep kind of thing. And I wish I was consistent with notebooks. One of the tricky things is I'll often start a notebook and not finish it, so then I'll have like 5 half-written notebooks, and then I'm looking for that thing that I wrote in one of them, because it's got, oh no, why didn't I just keep it all in one notebook? And that's been the same for like a whole decade.
I actually, a dear teacher of mine and actually former Yale faculty member, Marcia Norman, she said you should also, by the way, keep all your papers, because when you're old and you need money, clearly you can sell them if you've done a good job. But she said, keep your papers. And she said she was so ashamed because similarly all of her notebooks were like half filled. And the archivist was like, trust me, this is 98% of writers.
Yeah.
No one actually finishes a notebook, except for like Beckett. No one actually finished the whole notebook. That's like half of what's
I
going
finished
on.
mine.
I
I devour them.
You're a notebooker?
Yeah, I've got loads on my shelf. I've got, I think, about 20 so far.
And they're complete
complete
written
full,
through?
just full of nonsense.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
Just
We'll
notes
see
and
doodles and that.
doodles,
I guess that
everything.
counts.
Yeah.
And then similar question, maybe a few minutes back, but it sounds like, Matilda, what I hear you describing is what drives you in the process is like curiosity in some form, right? That there's something about like every question begets a question, and that's sort of that's like the fuel and the ghost in your machine, right?
Yeah, the world is so bloody big and has so many people in it, and nothing makes sense. And I'm desperately trying to find sense in all of it, and sometimes sometimes it's not even about the destination to get into the sense, it's the journey I went on to try and understand something that is outside of my lived experience, outside of my skills, outside of my knowledge, outside of my community. Like, it is a constant, which is why it's never boring, because each journey is so different. Every play that I've written has asked something different of me, and that's why I never feel the same by the time I've finished the play. By the time it's on, I feel like a different person. I'm not the person that I was that's at the beginning of the play a couple years ago. Yeah.
And Roy, I'm curious, listening to Matilda talk, do you feel any kinship with that idea? Like, what is it that gets you, what's driving you from one draft to another? Like, what are you bringing to the vomit draft that's telling you the choice to make for the next
It's not a million miles away from what Matilda just said. It is just trying to make sense of the world that I'm writing about. You know, I often begin stories with a sense of frustration, anger, confusion, and that, and so me trying to write the plays, me just trying to make sense of why is things the way they are? Why does that person behave that certain way? Why does that person believe that thing that's at odds with? I mean, I love knottiness and I love contradiction and. You may have I may have two friends who grew up together, love each other like brothers or sisters in their plays, but they both have conflicting political views. And for me, in terms of writing, that's me finding the fun of trying to make sense of those two people, those two characters. What do they really believe in, and how much what do they really feel about themselves and about each other?
Do you consider yourselves political artists?
Oh, hell yeah. I've had to be.
Yeah.
I've had to be. I actually didn't get a choice. Because, we live in a world so full of rigid systems, and these systems try to dictate, which frustrates me to no end. Systems that try to dictate destiny is wild, because destiny is meant to be sprawling and expansive and freewheeling and kind of like unplanned in a way. And these systems try to funnel us through these incredibly narrow paths, often very violent paths. And I'm constantly questioning, well, why? And you'll talk to you'll get to there's almost like each system has levels of gatekeepers. So you'll get to a gatekeeper and you'll be like, so why is it this way? Because it always has been. Well, why? Because it's how we do it. Well, why? Because there's no other way to do it. And it's like, well, who said that? It's like, well, go to the next gatekeeper and you're so you're just kind of up against gatekeepers. And I'm constantly questioning, I want to get to the person that started this nonsense and slap them and be like, there's no one way to be in this world. There was never meant to be a kind of same plan for everyone. We're not all meant to go through the same milestones. We don't all have the same destiny. And I think that's something that I'm often grappling with, probably on a personal level, as well as in my work of it doesn't have to be this way. We can abandon these systems. We can build alternative things in its place. It doesn't even have to be, we don't have to replace a system with a system. It could be something else entirely. But you say that to people who've been conditioned or grown up in the systems, and they think you're talking gibberish.
How about you, Roy?
It's, the question is not that many miles away from the question that I've often been asked when I started out, and I often used to struggle with it. It's like, so Roy, are you a writer or a black writer? And I really often struggled answering that question, and then finally I was able to. And kind of where I am on that argument is yes, I'm a black writer, but it's my job. I don't think it's my job to say I'm not a writer. I'm not a black writer. I'm a writer. I think it's to say yes, I'm a black writer, but it's my job to question what your definition of what a black writer is. That I feel is my job, and I like to have a lot of fun doing that. And,
yes, I share that. You know, I think I always find it funny that only black writers are asked that question. But like, if you call someone a white writer, they're equally as uncomfortable. But there's no political thing to unpack in that, right? So I love calling people white writers and just seeing what happens.
I remember when I wrote. I was commissioned by the RSC to write a play for them. And I think they for their company of actors. And at the time, the company of actors were mostly black. And I think they were doing Winter's Tale and Pericles. And so they asked me to write a third play to kind of give, to accompany that. And I know what they were expecting. They were expecting something, and I gave them a play that was predominantly white.
Hilarious.
And that kind of messed with them. But they were fine.
Did they get the game?
They understood, but they were surprised. And I said, yeah, see, don't make assumptions.
I'm like Shakespeare.
Exactly.
You could do anything. That's wild. It's funny. I think of you both as kind of masters of a like kind of ensemble scene. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I think, there's a certain kind of dramaturgy that's like two characters on stage, dialectical debate, one of them leaves, new one comes on, and two. But you guys build these like interesting social systems that almost create a real, you both would get, you're the king of the kind of English social drama in that way.
Am I?
Right?
Oh.
But I think you are. I heard you were.
Thank you.
Michael told me that. I think about like Sing Your House Over the Lads, and you're really amazing at it's like set in a pub. It's 25. So I wouldn't talk about your work, but I didn't bring an example in. And I feel like in Sleepover we witnessed last night that kind of like it was like a Foursquare Sex in the City, but like young black diaspora British girls kind of multivocal thing going on. Are those? Is that something you're conscious of in the writing? Is that a kind of scene that you enjoy, or kind of play that you enjoy? These sort of social fabric.
Yeah,
stories?
I mean, Sing Your Heart Out for the Lads. That came from a real life experience I had in a pub in London, watching that actual game, and these bunch of guys came storming in, completely changing the atmosphere, and it was very uncomfortable for me because I think I was the only black person there in that pub. But the writer in me kicked in. I kind of thought that's an amazing experience, and so I tried to listen and pay attention as much as I could, so I could bottle it in my mind and go home as soon as I could and write the piece. And fortunately, at the time, I was commissioned by the National Theatre, and they're one of the theatres in England who are able to. They could afford a big cast. So I was, so I was grateful I was able to, and and they loved it, and so I wrote it.
It's an amazing piece of writing.
Similarly, so I was thinking my very first play, which was back in 2014, 2014. Muscovado was like 6 or 7 characters, and we were able to get that many actors. And then my next play, Little Miss Burden, was a 3-hander, then Sleepover was a 4-hander. And I think I am a fan of big plays. Nothing against 2-handers or one solo shows. I just don't think that's my wheelhouse. That I like to see bodies on stage. I like to see a lot of bodies on stage. It makes me feel more like representative of the worlds that I exist in, which is seeing lots of people. I feel like there's something about maybe 1 or 2-handers reminding me, at least personally, when I'm in the audience, the kind of artifice of theatre, because rarely am I in a room with just 1 or 2 people or on my own, like maybe just in my bedroom, but actually my world is so populated. So I often want to see that on stage, the population of bodies, of people, of stories. So I tend to not to write less than 3, to be honest. And then my next play that I'm writing is back up to like 6 or 7. And I'm like, I have no idea who's going to put it on, but I'm often not thinking about that. I'm just kind of like, I want to tell all these interweaving narratives and journeys, because that's how my life feels. I have a lot of people that come in and out, and I want to explore that, the why people come sometimes only for a season and not for many years like siblings. I
always find these kinds of words interesting when writers are up awarded alongside poets and novelists, and I mean, it feels great because you feel very validated as a writer. But I think it's also interesting because we always, as I teach and I think more and more about this, we have this funny like technology we're kind of stuck to, like the script.
Yes.
You know, and people are always like, how do you read a play? You know, it's like, what are these names doing here? And like, why is there dialogue? And why is the action line farther along? And I realize it's because we are engaged in like a stranger, more multi-layered sense of seduction, a form of seduction, right? Because we're trying to get our play to reality.
Yeah.
We're trying to get people to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, as you're writing, are you thinking about, I mean, I think some of the most important people in that are actors, right? They're the ones who can really mess your play up, as you all know. Yeah, you know, are you thinking about actors as you're writing? Is that, where do they come into the world for you in the process of, from that initial impulse through, let's say, production?
I think for my first few plays, it was just me being in panic, just getting the play done and written, and hopefully the theatre will like it. I mean, to answer your question, the last few years, I do think more about actors, particularly actors I would love to have them, and sometimes I watch their performances and try to capture their voice patterns and feed it into the play. Hello, that's pretty screwed up if they don't end up not doing it. They end up not doing it.
Get shoot your shot.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I do think of that, and because I think the script as a theatre script, it is a map. It's a blueprint for the actors, because it's part of the stage. We spend our months writing these words and putting it down and framing it as you just laid out, and then it's not finished. It's nowhere near finished. And then you hand it to a director, and then they hand it proverbially to the actors, and then it becomes a life. So you're part of you're like a cog in a wheel.
Yeah, you got to prove it to so many people that it's worth them to give their spirit to it. Yeah, totally. How about you, Matilda?
I think of actors in the latter part of the process. That actually in the first few drafts where it's just me and the page, it's more characters and their essences. And the reason I think I do that is because I often write characters with certain characteristics that I may not have met yet. So I actually don't know who's the actors that are going to play this, or if they live in London or the UK, or are available, kind of thing. So I'm often just kind of trying to, at least in the script, and imbue a kind of essence that I'm looking for, so that when I have talks with the director about who they're going to audition, I'm like, this is the essence we're trying to find. Can you find an actor whose essence might complement this in a way? And when I'm redrafting, say just before rehearsals or in rehearsals, that's when kind of actors kick in. So for example, a common thing in at least my last two plays is intervals, often for access reasons. Yes, it makes the play longer than, a play that could be 90 minutes is now 2.5, but actually sometimes I work with actors who do need breaks. They do need a moment to go backstage, have a rest, do what they need to do to be able to then come back and finish the story. So I know that sometimes I'm writing knowing that we can't just power through it, that actually it's an access requirement for the people on stage. Also, when I'm writing, I try, especially if I'm writing disabled characters, I'll give specifics if the disability is relevant to the story. If not, I'll leave it open, because actually I want to find someone whose condition might not quite fit it, but we can change the script to accommodate them in that way. So I'm really up for leaving gaps in spaces for actors to come in and surprise us, that actually maybe this wasn't originally written for an actor with this condition, but now they're in the play, kind of thing. And I often like thinking of actors when we're at that point, because I love pushing actors. I love seeing sweat. I love actors dancing. I love seeing them use the whole space. We're not just kind of relegated to these the corners of the stage. I want us to kind of play around on stage. So I'm often like, how can we get actors sweating more? Can we get a dance number in? Can we get them lip syncing to something? Can we get a costume change? I'm like, let's use it all.
I love what you've just done is also peeled back the curtain a bit on what the art of playwriting actually is, too. That, playwright is spelled W-R-I-G-H-T, like a
Yeah.
shipwright, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's often lost, that something we're ultimately doing is building, that it's
Yes.
not actually just about writing, but
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
building a
yeah.
kind of circumstance or a game board.
Yeah.
And inside of that, we have to manage things like actor limits, push them when they want to. You're managing transitions and you're seeing it out. This is actually the substance of craft that never gets unpacked because people don't see. Everyone thinks we're just sitting there with our crayons, like drawn on a wall, but actually you're building a system. You're building a machine for people.
And it's very useful things to bear in mind, and it will come with experience. The more plays you write, the more theatres you work in, that will come with you. Because I remember that was a life lesson for me about 15 years ago, and about that time I thought maybe I know it all. No, I don't. And I was commissioned to write a play for the downstairs space at the Royal Court, and for me at that time, that's a
Iconic,
big deal.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what that meant. So I thought, if I'm lucky, the play gets done, my name, the play is going to be out red lights in Sloane Square in London, which I don't think there's a playwright in the world who doesn't want that.
Right.
Doesn't want that.
I want that.
And you'll get it. And Ian Rickson, who ran the theatre at the time, we had our meeting in the downstairs space.
Oh, wow.
And then he said, "Oh, okay, well, I've got to go for another meeting, but I want you to stay. Stay as long as you like and absorb, take it all in. Let the space feed you." And it most certainly did. For a very lot of the things that Mildred just stated, how big a stage have these actors got, and how much time have they got to go backstage and come back on again? And you just allow that to inform your writing. It's really, really useful, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, I was talking to someone recently about how every major playwright we can think of in the world had a close association with the theater, and that was necessary because not every architectural space provides the same opportunities storytelling-wise.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the kind of tragedies of this moment is there's so many vagrant playwrights who are writing for a black box who get put in a thing, and no one thinks about how space puts pressure on the actors, which puts pressure on the ability for the story to be delivered.
Yeah.
And that's a really major. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that. But we're going to open up to the audience in a second. But I have this. As I prepped for this, I listened to these two podcasts you guys did, both with Michael. But you did an incredible one with Simon Stevens, is all anyone wants is Simon Stevens to talk about them in front of them. It's such a profound, But I'm curious to hear, you spoke about Bola Agbaje's Gone Too Far, which is an iconic piece of Black British writing, and maybe Bala, I don't know.
I know Bola,
yeah. And I'm curious, to hear you talk about who some of your influences are. Who's your pantheon of playwrights who you feel with you when you're writing, or who you hope to emulate? Then I want to hear you answer that question, because I know I'm talking into kind of two different generations of playwriting here.
Ooh, yeah, that's such a great question. So Bola Agbaje was the first play that I'd gone too far. Was the first play that I'd read. That I'd seen Nigerian representation in Britain, and that got me so excited to the point that when I finished the play, I had to call my mom to check that I understood the Yoruba that was spoken. I was like, that does mean this, right? And she's like, yeah, you got it. I was like, oh yeah, I knew it. It got me so excited to essentially see myself in a play that's about two brothers. And I'm one of four siblings. It felt so... kind of a lightning in a bottle moment where I was like, oh, I didn't know. In some ways, almost like I didn't know I needed permission, but I also didn't know you could do that in a play. And that had a huge impact on the plays that I'd then go on to write. I also think some of the works of the peers that I've now, or people that I can call peers, which is incredible. There's Jess Tom, who's a disabled artist of a disabled arts organization called Tourette's Hero, going to see her work at a theatre called Backstage in Biscuitland was again the first time I'd seen disability representation that represented my lived experience of going to the theatre. So Jess has Tourette's and often struggles going to the theatre, and not struggles going to the theatre because of who she is, but because of the theatre etiquette that is enforced in theatres. And I felt so seen when she's on stage, also a wheelchair user, in all her glory, all her disabled glory and joy. And again, I didn't know I needed permission to know that that was possible. I think of playwrights like Ross Willis, who also another disabled playwright who wrote a brilliant two-hander called Wolfie, and I'm kind of inspired by all my kind of peers of their kind of boundary pushing and disabled playwrights not just writing about their disabilities. Like, I think that's often the thing I'm approached about, is that, oh, Matilda's a wheelchair user, let's get her to write this thing about being blind. And you're like, that's not the same. And I kind of feel like I've been inspired by the community of artists that I'm fortunate enough to be in community with, who are always reminding me that I can write the sci-fi opera, I can write the horror, I can tell whatever story I want to, and I don't need permission to do it. And if I've not seen it, that's even more of a reason to write it. And I should also note that I went to go see Roy Williams' play when I was in secondary school.
This is what I'm setting up here. You see what's happening?
And I've told this to him now at least twice, that how surreal it was. And also how incredible that play was. It was Joe Guy at Soho Theatre, and we went on a school trip with my drama class, and we all had to write essays, but in the style of the play, and I got a really good grade.
You're welcome.
So Roy is also one of my writing heroes, which is why it's so surreal to be in the same category as him, be on this stage as him, because his work has opened the door for a sea of Black British playwrights beyond, and the ones to come as well.
And Roy, I'm curious, I know. Sorry to
Well,
do that.
there's four I'd like to quickly mention, and each for personal reasons. First one is a writer called Barry Keefe. Not that well known over here, although he wrote the screenplay to quite a well-known British film made in the 80s with Bob Hoskins and Helen Mirren called The Long Good Friday. But his background was theatre. And he gave me a voice, because the characters and the world he was writing about what it meant to be young, to be working class, to be young and black, he captured the voices of that generation. And that really, really spoke to me. It really did. The second one is August Wilson, I would say. He gave me inspiration, because what I get from his work is he never forgets those characters are black, but it's not specifically about them being black. It's just them living. And I really took that on board as a real lesson in terms of the characters. All right, I never forget that they are of colour, but that's not the only thing that drives them. That's not the only thing they're about. They're very flawed, complicated characters, and I thought that's a real very useful lesson for myself. Third one is it's two writers for the same reasons. One is a writer called David Eldridge, and another writer called Tanika Gupta. And David Eldridge, he very similar to myself. He grew up in the East End of London, very working class, but he went to public school and got a scholarship and writes amazing plays. And the first play he wrote again captured the angst and anger of what it meant to be young, white and working class in England at the time. And same with Tanika Gupta. She wrote plays about being British and Asian as well. And they both gave me permission, because I remember when my first play was done, both their plays were on at the same time, and I watched both of them, and I couldn't wait to meet them.
Wow.
I was such eager to meet them, and because they finally gave me permission to write stories I wanted to write about. So I'll say those four.
Wow. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to open up this to the room now. I don't know if we have a microphone. How does this work? Someone tell me.
Oh, yes, she's got one.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I think if we could just raise your hand, I think we'll come to you. There's one question over here, in blue shirt. And then we'll do this kind of nice beige shirt, and then we'll do this white camisole.
Thank you.
That's my method here. Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I'm wondering why you became dramatists or writers of plays. Do you ever think of becoming writers of fiction or nonfiction, the difference between those media?
I would never say no, but I think at the moment for me, and it's been this way for most of my writing career, writing plays and screenplays, film and television and radio. That's what drives me. I wouldn't say no to that. I mean, it'd have to be. I'd have to have a really good long think about it in terms of what I want to write about and why in that form. But never say never.
So yeah, I've semi-recently been published in 3 children's anthologies, and I hope to do more because there's something about reaching children at such a formative part of their life and being able to put complex ideas to them in interesting and funny and absurd ways, and I've had a lot of fun on the 3 projects that I've worked on. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in dipping more than just a wheel in. Yeah.
All right, let's take our next question here
Yes.
on the aisle. Camisole, and then this lovely person whose name I know, Gloria.
Hi, I just want thank you both so much. I got to see the excerpt readings last night, and they were amazing, fantastic, hilarious, incredible. But I was just wondering, what is y'all's philosophy on abandoning ship? Are you ever working on something and you really just decide like, this is not it, it is not, or is there a point of no return for you? What is your relationship to moving on from an idea or powering through?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so one of the best advice, and I got this advice at the very start of my career when I did my first ever playwriting course, was that in my career, probably in my lifetime, I will write more plays that don't get made than do. And that was such a great heads up to know that any play, no matter with all the will in the world, some of them just won't ever see the light of day. Some I'm glad that they never see the light of day. They don't deserve to. But others were painful experiences of being like, oh, this is the end of the road. The promised producers, company's gone bankrupt, or they've changed artistic directors at the theatre it was meant to be on, and now that new artistic director's not interested. Sometimes there are so many things out of your control as to why that thing now has stopped. And I do have to grieve them. I do eat my Ben and Jerry's. I do vent to my siblings, being like, why doesn't the world understand? But then I will move on, and I keep a graveyard on my laptop, so of all the not finished or either cancelled projects. And sometimes I revisit and change the flowers, might nick a line or two, might nick a character's name. But I've also learned to accept it is part of my career, it's part of the process.
The same answer, really. But also, so listen, I've learned myself, and I tell other writers as well, is when you, as you say, abandon ship or give up on a play, that's not weakness, that's strength, because you know what your standards are. And if you know what, this is not working, that's good. That's a real strength you must hold on to, because you know when you're having a good day, or when you know when it's a play that's just not ready, and you put it in the bottom drawer. And I've done that so many times, and I've taken it out again. And as Matilda says, I sometimes pinch, I take things out and put it somewhere else. So waste not, want not.
Camisole, Gloria.
I was wondering, sort of, after you've written a play and you're thinking about sort of getting it on its feet, do you have a process of like workshopping with a cast, or what does that look like, the first stages of getting it off the page?
Well, I think by the time I think you instinctively know, okay, when it's ready. And I think the theatre as well, I think any good theatre, they'll know when it's because you've gone through so many drafts with a director and something. So I think instinctively they'll say, okay, let's hear it. Let's get some actors together and workshop in it. And that's a great experience, because it's usually, more often than not, that's the first time you hear your play said out loud. And you go away and you chip at it and do a bit more. So I welcome that moment when it comes, because then it's also it kind of makes you feel, oh yeah, the theatre, they're serious about this. They're gonna program it. They're gonna spend some time on it, because and rightly they should, because they've paid you. As meager as the money was, but they still paid you, and they want you to do well. No theatre wants you to screw up. They want your play. They want you. So use the resources they have. Absolutely.
And I'll offer this other side where, like, you're broke, you're starting out, and you don't know nobody. So, so once you've written, like, a draft, and maybe you've gotten to a wall, like, you kind of know, I don't know what else I can do with this. You can't see the woods from the trees. So some of the things that I did was get writers that I've met on other writers' courses, the ones that you chimed with, not the ones that, you know, not to fuck with, but get those writers to either do, like, a play swap, that I'll read your play and give feedback if you read my play and give feedback. You can also bribe some writers to come around your home and, like, offer them snacks or, you know, dinner, and everyone comes to read your play. You record it on your phone so you've got a copy of it, and that way you can listen back to it to be able to hear it. Because Roy's absolutely right that the play changes the moment you hear those words spoken out of anyone's mouth, whether they're an actor or not. You'll be able to really identify what's working and what isn't. You can get your siblings to read. I did ask my sibling once, and we never asked them again. So if you can't, and if you don't, and if you take that even further, if you don't know any other writers' family, then you read it. You make yourself a cup of tea. You make sure your phone is fully charged. You record yourself reading it. Trust me when I say, when you listen back to it, the bits that bore you of your own voice are the bits you need to rewrite. So there are so many ways when you may not be a commission. So for example, many of the plays I started writing out were not commissions I wrote off the back whilst I was working, kind of thing. But it meant I had to find other ways of development before the play was quote unquote good enough to send to a theatre who would be like, okay, we can pay for 3 days with some actors and a director if you'd like, kind of thing. So there are still some steps you can take if you're not yet being supported by a theatre. Yeah.
And Gloria?
I think we may have time for just one last question.
Yeah, here we are. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gloria. I'm a playwriting student here. I thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this. This has been really educational for me. A question that I had was about dialogue, and I think that you both have touched upon how, you know, when it hits an actor's mouth, it changes significantly. And I think I was just curious for y'all, like, if dialogue is something that sort of exists in the stars and comes through and just kind of like pours down, is it kind of collected beats for you? And then more specifically, then how do you go about revising, specifically when it comes to like rhythm? If an actor maybe is not getting it, but you're like, I think it works on the page, but not like with in someone else's mouth.
I don't know if that answers your question, but one thing I always like to do is I love sitting in auditions for my play, because one, it's one of the first opportunities I get to hear the play read out loud, and also most importantly is you get to hear 6 different or 8, depending on the day, the interpretations of what you've written. And if one actor, if all of the actors are stumbling on that scene in that play, then that's something you need to work on. Because if they're all doing it, then clearly there's some sort of structural or dialogue problem. In terms of dialogue, I think that just comes from, I just love listening to people. I'm one of those, I've always been that kind of person. I don't talk much, but I like listening, and I like stealing. And from what people say, I mean, the gold you get from people just in walks of life and things that they may say to you as well is always fun. So many people in this world they're poets and they don't even know it. It's things that come out, and it's our job just to kind of it's not easy just to kind of hear that. It's like what I said at the beginning about hearing a song and you're just able to repeat the rhythm, and that's quite a unique gift to have.
Yeah. And I also think dialogue comes from knowing your characters, so spending time with them, so like putting them in different scenarios. Sometimes even if your character's not set in present day, finding out what are their views on present day things happening in the world. And similar to what Roy said, I used to use my train journeys to work to just literally people watch and listen, and I'd write down certain cadences that I'd not heard before, certain phrases. So try and go to busy places like malls, you'll often hear so many accents, so many different ways of saying things. The similar tip that your that you mentioned about the person who told you on the bus,
brother,
your brother on the bus ride, that actually the bus is a great way of listening to people. People love to have such personal conversations on the bus. And I would hear all sorts of cadences and things and accents, and also reading poetry. I think that was a big influence that I didn't mention earlier. For a long time, I used to read poetries different anthologies on a weekly basis, because there's just something about poetry that is almost like writing in code, that you're giving the reader the opportunity to decipher something else in their own way. Their own interpretation becomes the accepted consensus on that poem. So I think reading poetry and widely and listening, and if you're allowed to, might voice record if you're hearing conversations that, I like the way this person speaks, but I don't want them to know I'm listening, and I don't want to forget what they're saying. But I'm not saying you should go around recording people without their consent, obviously. But there are so many ways of kind of developing dialogue. But I think sometimes starting from, who is this person, and what is their journey that has brought them to this point in the story? Yeah.
Great. So before we send you off on the next stop on your tour of intellectual and creative labor, I would love to hear briefly one thing that's inspiring each of you right now, and then we'll say goodbye. One thing inspiring you. It could be Beyonce. It could be a song by Beyonce.
Anything?
Anything. Literally anything. Yes.
Literally anything. YouTube. My favorite song ever is "Stand By Me" by Benny King. And I've wasted more than an hour at home listening to cover versions from so many artists, well-known artists. My favorite cover version is Tracy Chapman. She does it.
Of course, yeah.
I love her.
Of course.
But then there was a cappella guys from all over the world singing that song. So is that a good
answer? That's an amazing answer. Right, yes, yeah. Matilda. You got to imagine Stand By Me. Just kidding.
It's been inspiring me. I know. I can't think clearly.
You're jet lagged. These people are jet lagged, by the way. Yeah.
But what's been inspiring me? Actually, meeting new people and seeing new faces and being on different lands. That's really inspiring, because the world is so huge. I will not live long enough to see every corner of the world. So the places that I'm able to get to that aren't home is inspiring, because I know that is a privilege. A privilege I don't take lightly. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. You inspired me today, so I'm taking this into my day. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations. And thank you all for joining us.